like the Bush administration, I had no respect for the Republicans at that time. I thought they deserved a 40-year timeout after that. But once MAGA came along, I'm like, okay, this is the populist kind of revolution that I've been looking for. I wouldn't have cared if Trump signed up with the Democrats or the Republicans. If he pursued the policy objectives that he's pursuing, I would have signed up either way.
He's nothing like anybody. He's a unique creature, and he's just infected and taken over by power of personality and will the Republican Party. I lived in New York at the time, so you know him as a personality in New York. This audacious, narcissistic, larger than life dude. And I'm talking to my friends. I'm like, could this guy possibly be elected? That can't be. The apprentice guy, the you're fired guy, that can't possibly be. But then I saw him in those debates when he was running the first time, and there were 15 seasoned career Republican politicians in the room, and he slaughtered them. I mean, they didn't stand a chance. And I thought, oh my God, this guy is something we've never seen before. Reagan wasn't this good. I mean, he's just amazing. And then he loses, they steal the election from him, and the MFer comes back and wins again. How you doing, Joel?
Good, can you hear me?
I can. Hey, thanks for your support, man. I really appreciate it. I like the tree painting behind your head there.
I went to Occidental College in the early 1980s. I was a political science major. My advisor there was a guy named Roger Boucher, who was a very, very interesting cat, but Barack Obama also went to Occidental College in the early 80s, also majored in political science, and also had the same advisor that I had. And so I wasn't there at the same time because he transferred out and I came a couple years later. But I had the same major. I was in the same environment, taking the same classes from the same professors.
But there's proof of life anyway. Obama existed before he ran for president.
Proof of life at Occidental College? Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
He then transferred to Columbia University, and that's where he got his BA. Now, you ask people at Columbia, they're like, I don't remember ever seeing that guy. But at Occidental College, he is remembered, and there is a record of him being there.
Okay.
And so, and you know, I've heard interviews with a guy who was a classmate of his, and he said, yeah, we were all communists, not Marxists, not liberals. We were communists. The man I heard interviewed was saying, I was a communist. He was a communist. He was one of the more radicalized. We were like intellectual Marxists. He was more of a rabid communist type. And the man, I can't remember his name, but if you Google it, you might be able to find it. It's a very obscure interview, but if you're really looking for it, you might be able to find it. Because what he said about Obama was, you know, he said, this was in like 2010 or something. And he was saying, today, I'm kind of like a Republican conservative. And I can tell you the story of my transition from being a communist in college to how I got where I am now. But I've never heard that story in the case of Barack Obama. He was a communist and he probably still is at heart. Yeah. Like the reason we don't have the story of him saying, oh yeah, I was a communist as a kid, but now I'm reformed and I'm more of a centrist Democrat or whatever they want us to believe, you know. So anyway, I've heard you describe him as a commie or a Marxist or whatever, and I'm just letting you know there's backup for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because communism is an artificial construct. It's completely inconsistent with reality, a world with limited resources, with human nature. So it can only exist in an artificial construct, usually a construct provided by, you know, capitalist society. And most people get checked at some part in that process. They encounter reality, right? The cliche is a conservative is a liberal who got mugged, right? And most people, what's another cliche? When you're young, you're a liberal, and when you're older, you're conservative, right? Something along those lines. Most of us get checked. I was always conservative. I grew up with Reagan, but I certainly understand people when they're in college, they tend to be more liberal. I mean, just look at the world in which they're in, right? Most things are being provided to them, and the hard world has not yet struck. But for most of us, at some point, the hard world does strike, and we're like, oh shit, I don't want to be a communist. If I'm a communist, everyone's taking my shit away from me. But some people don't. Some people manage to stay within that sheltered cocoon where they're being rewarded at every step of the process for staying a communist. And that's like Obama. And that's why even the Communist Party, even in the old Soviet Union, there were people who had vacation homes and plenty of money. There's a tiny protected minority that stays at the top. The poop floats to the top, right? But of course, as a systemic system, as a culture, societal system, it cannot work. The only ones that can benefit is that tiny cream at the top.
But like you said, that thriving within a larger society that's capitalist usually is where a little communist cell works the best.
Right.
And like I run my family sort of communistically.
So tumors don't grow in tumors, right? And tumors grow in a healthy body, right? So that's how communism needs to function. So and yes, when everyone's biological imperatives are aligned, right? When it's your family and everyone's got a compelling shared interest in the success of the family, more than life or death, right? Parents will die for their children. And then it gets a little attenuated if it's your extended family or if it's a communal living arrangement like a kibbutz. But once you get past 40 or 50 people, it's done, man. People are going to fight for resources for what's closer to them in terms of their biological imperative. And once you're talking hundreds or thousands of people, it's you're lucky if you have a cohesive society like America used to have in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and it doesn't become balkanized like it is to such a great extent today.
It becomes a giant flock of sheep, and then one wolf gets in and starts eating people and victimizing people. Right. That communal thing doesn't work with psychopaths and sociopaths in the mix. They can come in and well, I think of our governor here in California, for example, where he wears the sheep's clothing or tries to, but he's actually a wolf.
He strikes me as an utter psychopath.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to also share, like, at that time in the early 80s at Occidental College, the place was super woke. Before woke was a word.
Okay.
It was proto woke. This was like ground zero of the wokeness and at the time I was more libertarian and looking around like, man, all this Marxism, it's interesting. I can talk about it intellectually, but it's never going to fly, man. This is a capitalist country, and isn't the Soviet Union the enemy, the other polarity that we're kind of arranged against? The Soviet Union was barely going at that point. And I was a political science major studying this stuff, and I just thought this Marxism isn't going to go anywhere. But I underestimated how far it could go until we got the backlash that I think we're experiencing now with MAGA. And I agree with you about all the rhinos, like the Bush administration. I had no respect for the Republicans at that time. I thought they deserved a 40-year timeout after that. But once MAGA came along, I'm like, okay, this is the populist kind of revolution that I've been looking for. I wouldn't have cared if Trump signed up with the Democrats or the Republicans. If he pursued the policy objectives that he's pursuing, I would have signed up either way.
I mean, he's not a Republican, right? I mean, not in any meaningful sense. I mean, if you think of Republicans as they have been for decades, at least since Reagan, right? Yeah, right. John McCain, these guys. That's the Republican Party. He's not anything like. He's nothing like anybody. He's a unique creature. And I think about what happens after Trump, and maybe if we're lucky, it's a J.D. Vance, a Marco Rubio. There's that kind of, we can speculate on what that kind of path should look like. But there'll never be another one of these guys. He's amazing. And he's just infected and taken over by power of personality and will, the Republican Party. And God willing, he'll reshape it.
You hate FDR. They gave FDR four terms.
Yeah.
He didn't finish the last one, just he started it and then died. But he got elected 4 times.
Now, in fairness, there's also something to be said, for turnover,
term limit,
right? Yes. So, the TV show Firefly, are you familiar with it? The science fiction show?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, it doesn't really matter. But the point is, it was a show that was short-lived. It got 1 season and then it was canceled. And that first season was fantastic. It was amazing. And everyone, when it wasn't renewed, we were all shocked. We were like, we have to have another season of this. And then as you mature in life, you realize, You know what? If they'd done 3 or 4 seasons of that, it might have been like The Walking Dead. It might have turned into trash, and then we wouldn't have such fond memories of it, right? So that kind of summer love has that then like Romeo and Juliet, they all die, so they never have to get old and be a married couple who's fighting all the time, right? They have that perfect existence of that first tinge of love. There may be some of that, Trump's too old to do many terms anyway, but if he did 3 or 4 terms, by the end of those 3 or 4, we might be saying, it's time for a change. The world, maybe he's the same, but the world has changed around him. And sometimes you just need a different guy in the job for the changed circumstances. But for right now, I can't imagine a guy who's better suited to save our nation and realize its greatest potential than this President Donald J. Trump. We are blessed to have him.
People say that Trump is, like a narcissist and has a ginormous ego and whatever, but who else could have possibly survived 10 years of hurricane force propaganda, hate, undermining, treason, and lawfare against him? I wouldn't have lasted 2 years. I would have been in a mental hospital. And
I just remember when he came down that escalator and he announced, and I knew Trump from New York. I mean, I'm not personally, of course, but I lived in New York at the time. So you know him as a personality in New York, this audacious, narcissistic, larger than life dude. And I'm talking to my friends. I'm like, could this guy possibly be elected? That can't be the apprentice guy, the you're fired guy. That can't possibly be. But then I saw him in those debates when he was running the first time, and there were 15 seasoned career Republican politicians in the room, and he slaughtered them. I mean, they didn't stand a chance. And I thought, oh my God, this guy is something we've never seen before. Reagan wasn't this good. I mean, he's just amazing. And then he loses. They steal the election from him, and the MFer comes back and wins again. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Epic. Yeah, it's epic what he's achieved. And all they want to do is keep taking pot shots and tearing them down, and all the mind control and the propaganda. I watch the liberal media. My friends are liberals. The college I went to, the family I come from, the state that I live in, like everybody. If I look at my Facebook feed, and it's all just hurricane force every day for 10 years of hatred and propaganda and undermining of Trump. And most of it is not true. Every once in a while, he's not perfect, but people are on the left are really, really brainwashed. And some of them actually have good values. I know this because they're my friends, they're my coworkers, they're my family. But the evil of the left is to take people that are kind of well-intentioned and then feed them all these lies and propaganda and turn them to the dark side without them even realizing they think they're crusaders for democracy while they destroy democracy, et cetera, et cetera. Moves happen globally in lockstep across the first world. Okay. You're on fire about the illegal migrant invaders, but it's happening across the first world, like in 98% of the countries. At the same time, they open the floodgates in all the countries. It's coordinated. Coordinated, right. Not just across every state and across our whole nation, but around the entire world. And they got most, like Sweden kind of escaped a little bit. Some of the other, but it's a global project. And that's what I'm interested to, hear your thoughts
nothing,
on.
Nothing can be saved unless these nations completely divest themselves of every third world migrant in their nation. And that's whether people like the third world or not. I don't care about that. But the cultures are too different. And it's oil and water. They cannot mix. And if you bring the third world into a first world, high trust Western society, it just becomes the third world nation of wherever the migrants are coming from. I think every first world nation on the face of the earth is already gone. I think they're lost. I think America is the only hope, and we're not guaranteed to survive either. But I look at these Western countries, and I've been to all of them throughout Europe, and they're unrecognizable to me. I mean, I've been to London, I've been to Paris, I've been to Rome, I've been to all these cities, And they're unrecognizable. You don't see Romans, you don't see Brits, you don't see French anymore. It's all the third world. And in some of these countries, I mean, just look at England. England's Home Secretary, they just announced today, is an Arab woman. I mean, the mayor of London is Arab. The mayor of Birmingham is Arab. Senior officials they're Muslims. It's effectively a Muslim nation.
From 20 years ago, and there's a sense of entitled hostility from the invaders now that you can feel and observe. You know, like they look at you like, what are you still doing here? You know,
they're in charge, right? It's their country now, right? It's like the Somalian pilot, right? Look at me. This is my England now. And they're right, man. I mean, demography is destiny. If you bring them in and you let them stay and you let them have kids and they have 8 kids a family as opposed to your half of a kid per family, it's all over. You've given away your country. You don't. It doesn't magically stay Britain because you have dreams about how it used to be. And all the things they're incurring, Brits getting arrested for waving their flag, for memes, all that stuff the liberals in America would do to us instantly if they had the power. They would treat every one of us exactly like they treated the January 6th protesters. They would put us in prison without hesitation. They would ruin our lives. The only way to avoid that fate is to never let them have power over anything of any importance. And that's the promise of MAGA, that MAGA becomes so dominant that and by the way, it's working in the U.S. I mean, we still have to get rid of the migrants, but the Democrats' approval rating under 20%. I mean, the House seats they're losing from every dimension: redistricting, people moving out of the blue states, cleaning up the rolls, getting rid of the third world migrants being counted in the census. The Democrats are, as the party currently exists, is looking to be in the political wilderness for decades, which is fantastic. I do start hearing some of the Democrat leadership beginning to say here and there, you know, this isn't working. We got to try something else. And I can't say I object. If they turn into a different party, well, then they might be acceptable in some form. You know, it's useful to have a loyal opposition. If there's nothing but Republicans in charge, the Republicans will be corrupt too. That's just human nature. But the Democrat Party, as it currently exists, has to die.
You do have 40% of the population that's so hardcore brainwashed against the MAGA thing. And then you have the rhino Republicans that are not entirely comfortable with it. So the hardcore MAGA, that's less than half the population. I think it's a fragile situation, and it is right. It's not right. I've been observing this stuff for 40 years and analyzing it. It was my major in college, and I've been paying attention and studying ever since. As I did other things, entrepreneurial career and real estate and whatnot, and traveling. But, you know, the question that I would pose is just, you know, can we observe that this is a kind of lockstep global agenda that's being pursued across many nations at once? And if that's the case, who's behind it and what's the end game and what's the point of it? Who are the architects and what's their agenda? And I mean, I think I have some more than half-baked answers to that, but that's my question for you.
And that's worth pursuing. So the way I think about this kind of thing, like we all have limited time, right, to pursue things. And I have friends who love talking about, I'll call them conspiracy theories. They wouldn't call them that, but like who killed JFK, really, that kind of stuff. And that's worth pursuing. Those are legitimate questions to answer. It's not my personal area of interest because I'm interested in the fight right in front of me right now. I feel that's where I can have the greatest influence. And the kind of thing you're talking about, there are larger, broader, global forces at work here. That's absolutely true. It's undeniable. There's no question about it. I just don't feel I can have much of an effect there. I'm hoping I can have a little bit of an effect in the moment, like today, a week, a month, 6 months out. I can talk about things that might help inflect how people see the world in that short-term sense. And then maybe others can say, all right, well, from that 6 month to the 1 year window, you know, what kind of worldview, what kind of ways of thinking about the world do we need to progress there? And then from a year out to 5 years out, you know, from the US to a global perspective, those things are all pursuing, but worth pursuing. But for me, I mean, I'm already doing 3 live streams today. And So I don't know that I'll be covering much global stuff. Most of my stuff is going to be limited to what's happening in the domestic U.S. The international stuff I cover will be international things that are directly impacting domestic U.S., like Indian migrants and that kind of thing. But
Well, we
that's
do
not to
have to
suggest
save ourselves. We have to save our ship first if we're going to be of any use to the rest of the world, right?
I just don't think, and nothing matters if we lose America, right? And we lose America if we don't get rid of these third world migrants. I mean, I think we have 190 million of them in the country, 40% of the population. Everybody says I'm crazy, but every time I see a headline, this Hyundai factory, the battery factory in Georgia, they walk in there and they arrest 500 illegal migrants in one building. I just don't believe there's only 30 million in the country. It doesn't make any sense to me. There's tens of millions of yeah, it's nonsense. Everywhere you go, they're everywhere.
Your number might be high, but theirs is way low. So,
well, all right. Let's say we start with my number and we deport half of them. That's a good starting point. That would mean it's 100% of what other people's numbers, right? So that's good.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, listen, I'm going to let you go. I actually don't have other people lined up, but I do have some news stories I want to cover. We got about 15 minutes. Before I get to the top of the hour here, which is what I'm going to try to limit these shows to. But hey, man, thank you for your support. Thanks for being here. We're going to try to do this every week or two. Feel free to come back anytime. And when I talk about the areas I tend to focus on, I just want to make everyone understand, you don't have to limit yourself to that. Anytime you want to come on the show and talk about anything, I may not know much about it if it's not in my wheelhouse, but I'm not trying to constrain what people can talk about. It can be anything. That's what, especially these shows, these MFFer shows are for.
You're a legal expert, and a lot of this, the battleground right now is in that legal area. The Republicans have the House and the Senate and the executive branch, and they're trying to use the judicial branch as a billion speed bumps and booby traps and ambushes, just to, because it's what they've got left. And what they're doing is unconstitutional and ridiculous and absurd. And that's your area of expertise. And so that's why people are finding your analysis so interesting and your rants and raves about it. It's great.
I have strongly held feelings about our constitutional order.
Yeah, I love listening to you, even on those rare occasions when I disagree in some small amount. It's usually not much. But even then, like, I enjoy the passion and when you get worked up about stuff. I think all your audience, that's why we're here. The passion that you have for it. So thanks for sharing.
Well, I appreciate that, man. All right. Have a great weekend. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your support as one of these MFers of the channel. I really appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon, man.
Thanks.